the show here if you want to. Very good. All right. Well, good morning, everybody. We're going to switch gears now. We've got folks in representing the organic dairy farm industry, and with us at the head of our table is Maddie Kepner, who's policy director for NOFA Vermont. We've also got our colleagues in the Senate Agriculture Committee joining us via Zoom. And in addition, we've got a number of witnesses who will be giving testimony both here in our room and remotely on Zoom. So welcome to you all. I'm going to just very quickly have our committee introduce ourselves, and then I'll ask the Senate folks to do the same. We're running a little bit behind schedule, and I don't want to take any more time than we need to with that step of the process here. But I'm David Durfee. I'm chair of the House Agriculture, Food Resiliency, and Forestry Committee, and represent Shaftesbury and Sunderland and Glastonbury down in Bennington County. And we'll just go around our table quickly.
Sure. Heather Supernat, Vice Chair. I represent Windsor 4, Barnard, Pomfret, and Bridgewater.
I'm Esme Cole. I represent Windsor 6 in Hartford, Vermont.
Mike Rice, I represent the Bennington-Rutland District, Danby, Dorset, Mangrove, Mount Tabor, and Peru.
Josie Levitt, Grandal Chittenden, Grandal County, and a sliver of West Milton.
David Templeman, Brownington, Barton, and Orleans Village. Oh, and Westmore.
Henry Pearl, I represent Danville, Cabot, and Peacham. And full disclosure on this conversation, I'm also an organic dairy producer.
Jed Lipsky, Lamoille 1, Stowe.
And Senator Starr, do you want to have your committee?
Yeah, good morning.
Sorry. I have blinders on, and our ranking member.
Rodney Graham, represent Orange 3, which is Williamstown and Chelsea.
Yeah, and this is Bobby Starr, Chair of Senate Ag from Orleans County.
Brian Collmore, Rutland County.
Irene Runner, Chittenden North plus Fairfax.
Brian Campion, Bennington County.
Rich Westman, Whale.
Yeah, glad to be here, and thanks, Dave. And if we have questions, we'll send you a note or raise our hand or holler.
Great. Yeah, I suggest the latter, holler, and we'll stop. We've got, in addition to witnesses, a few guests, and I just wanted to ask those who are not testifying if they would quickly just introduce themselves.
Great. Hi, I'm Hugh Henschel. I'm a first year at Middlebury, and I'm very excited.
Yes, I'm Chung Hyun. I'm from South Korea. I'm a junior at Middlebury.
He's ranking.
Good, welcome. Senator Starr, maybe you want to mute your room. We can hear you anyway. Okay, well, let's begin then. Welcome, Maddie.
Thank you so much. And I'm mostly going to speak from my notes, but the folks testifying from NOFA after me will be using these slides, and I'll just be running that show. I really want to thank both committees for taking the time to hear from us today about the economic crisis facing organic dairy producers right now. I'm going to provide some broad context and background on the issue, and then you'll hear from Jen Miller, NOFA Vermont's Farmer Services Director, and Mike Thresher, who is the incoming chair of our board, to provide some more data and insight as folks working with these farms every day before we hear from some farmers themselves, some of whom have traveled quite a ways to be here. So thank you all for being here as well. Historically, I just want to set the stage that going back to the beginning of organic dairy certification, the goals were both a focus on environmental sustainability, as I've shared with both of your committees, managing in a way that builds soil health, promotes biodiversity, and improves the health of animals and people, but also on a sustainable pay price for producers. And because this has been such a core tenet until recently, it was largely being achieved. Organic has not had to ask for a safety net as conventional has in the form of the Dairy Margin Coverage Program. So as I think you all have heard at this point, multiple factors have converged in recent months to create an impossible economic situation for our state's organic dairy farms. The combination of inflation, supply chain disruptions in the feed supply due to conflict in Ukraine, and persistent drought have caused the price of feed, fuel, and labor to increase sharply starting in late 2021. At the same time, the pay price organic farmers are receiving has stagnated at $8 to $10 per hundredweight below the cost of production. At the end of 2020, Vermont Organic Farmers, which is the certification program owned by NOFA Vermont that certifies to USDA standards, we certified 169 dairies at the end of 2020. As of yesterday, we are down to 139 and expect to lose 25 to 30 more in the coming months without swift and substantial intervention. We are getting calls every day, as Jen and Mike can testify, from producers who have stopped payments on their loans to create cash flow to continue operating, who have already put their cows or entire farms up for sale, or who are being cut off from grain sales because they are not able to pay. Beyond the human cost and heartache, the economic impact of losing these farms is substantial. The state's own data shows that dairy generates $2.2 billion annually for the state, or about $3.7 million per farm per year. And Mike's going to share more about the economic impact in a moment. The survival and success of organic dairies is also necessary for Vermont to meet the goals outlined in the Vermont Agriculture and Food Systems Plan for 2021 to 2030, as you've heard about just recently from the Farm to Plate folks. Specifically, organic dairy is critical to meeting multiple goals outlined under Sustainable Economic Development Goals, Environmental Sustainability Goals, and Healthy Local Foods for All Vermonters goals outlined on pages 14 and 15 of that plan. Losing organic dairies means Vermont will be less climate resilient, less economically resilient, and less food secure. Beyond that, research has shown that tourists value Vermont's open landscape and particularly associate Vermont with images of cows grazing on pasture. Organic dairies are those farms. While conventional dairies are not required to graze their animals, though some do, organic dairies are required to have their animals on pasture a minimum of 120 days per year and are required for their animals to get at least 30% of their dry matter intake, their diet, from pasture. In addition, there is a domino effect that we need to be aware of in letting our small dairies fail. If a milk hauler can't fill a milk truck because there aren't enough farms left on a particular route, they may pull out of the state altogether, leaving the remaining farms without anyone to pick up their product. We are seeking a one-time appropriation through the Budget Adjustment Act of $9.2 million, which represents a payment of $5 per hundredweight on all 2022 organic production in the state. And given that the pay price is hovering around $9 per hundredweight below the cost of production, this figure is what we believe will really allow our organic dairy sector to survive the coming year. I also want to emphasize in closing, before we move on to other witnesses, this is a one-time request. The USDA has recently announced the finalization of 2 critical rules to strengthen the enforcement of organic regulations across the country, including the organic origin of livestock rule and the strengthening organic enforcement rule. These rules are long awaited and widely expected to level the playing field in the organic dairy industry, bringing our producers' cost of production more in line with the national average. USDA has also recently announced some amount of relief looking forward at 2023, for which we are extremely grateful. However, we do not expect at this point, with the information that we have, for that relief to come close to keeping these dairies alive, nor are many of our producers likely to still be in business by the time that relief will reach them. Additionally, there will be a strong push for a meaningful organic dairy safety net similar to the Dairy Margin Coverage Program, which has been effective in supporting conventional producers in the 2023 Farm Bill. Thank you again for having us, and we're happy to take any questions at the end of our testimony. And I will give up the seat to Jen, and I'll be happy to move your slides or do it yourself.
I can just do it because then I can look at it. Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty. Jen, if you could just introduce yourself.
Sure.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, Senator Campion.
Thanks. So when you mentioned in the beginning, loss of dairy, was that, I just want to make sure that was specific to organic, correct? That was not all general dairy.
Yeah, the farms that are at risk of going out, those 25 to 30 that I mentioned, are specifically the organic dairies.
Okay, thank you. Just thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, last year we
Yeah, we have 2 chairs.
Oh, it's okay. I mean, I'll take it.
Go ahead, Bobby.
Yeah, we put quite a lot of money in the budget for upgrading our organic dairies so they could get into this new market. And that was administered through the ag agency. And my question is, have you been to the ag agency with your request and with the loss of farms to see where the secretary or the ag agency is taking this? Besides us, the administration's gonna have to be in on this ask of 9.2 million.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. And I should have started by acknowledging the Ag Agency and the Dairy Business Innovation Center have put some funding in to support organic dairy in the last couple of years. That particular pool of funds that you're referring to that helped specifically, it was primarily geared toward helping producers that were dropped by Horizon get picked up by another buyer because there were certain changes they needed to make to be able to be picked up. That pool of funding was $200,000. So those were very small grants distributed amongst those farmers, which we helped administer, and Jen in particular helped administer to get that money to farmers. It's frankly a really tragic irony that Organic Valley in particular was able to pick up the majority of those farms dropped by Horizon and now is not able to provide even close to a sustainable pay price to their producers. So those funds did help the producers in that moment, be picked up by another buyer. But unfortunately now those same farms find themselves in this really desperate financial situation. So we appreciate what the agency has done to support organic dairy. And it is frankly orders of magnitude less than what the needs are out there on the ground right now.
Rich has a question.
Could we get a breakdown of that 9 million and where it's, how it would be spent?
Yes, we can definitely provide that. And I actually have some data that we put together for the Appropriations Committee that details where that request is coming from and how we came up with that number. On the most basic level, it is a $5 per hundredweight retroactive payment on all 2022 organic production, as we estimated based on our cost of production study that Jen is going to present a little bit more about. And actually, we have a breakdown of that number in the slides to come. So it might be a good time to get into those.
Okay, any other questions before we move on then? All right, thank you. We'll change witnesses.
All right. Okay. Hi again. My name is Jen Miller. I run the Farmer Services Program at NOFA, Vermont. So I'm working with farms right now, I would say probably in the last 5 years, primarily organic dairy farms, business planning, transfer planning, and running the organic dairy cost of production project, which we'll see a little bit of data from as we move forward. But first I want to start with how we got to where we are today. The bottom out here in the red box is kind of like tracking, this is very broad strokes, but it's tracking the what happened to the pay price as we kind of cruised along from 2015 to 2022. And then the top in the blue box is looking at kind of the trends of like what was happening with the farms and then why, we're hitting a crisis point now. So looking, 2015, there's a high number of conventional dairies transitioning to organic. Pay prices were high. They were covering full cost of production at this point. 2016, the rate of transition started to slow. And 2017, there were really no more opportunities to transition into the organic milk market. That also was parallel to the point where the pay price slides started, right? So we started seeing pretty dramatic, chunks of $2 a hundredweight, $3 a hundredweight coming off of checks, starting in 2017. And that slide continued across to basically to 2020. Pandemic started, COVID relief payments came in, and they covered up were a Band-Aid to keeping people able to produce, despite the fact that their pay price had slid, basically $8 plus a hundredweight. We also had then the dairy margin coverage program. Conventional prices were low, and the margin triggered payments, and organic dairies benefited from those payments. So again, 2021, there was a Band-Aid covering up the low cost of production. The high cost of production, low pay price. we hit 2022, there's no DMC kick in. We have global supply chain disruptions, inflation, drought, everyone knows what's going on. And the pay price, which I'm about to show you, jumps, and the cost of production jumps and the pay price is stable, if not dropping. And the marginal increase that they have received recently comes nowhere to what they need.
Excuse me.
Jen, can you, oh, I'm sorry.
I'm wondering if you can explain why the DMC didn't kick in 2022.
In 2022. Oh, because so DMC, the Dairy Margin Coverage Program, is just designed based on conventional market. So the conventional milk price was high, and it was high enough that even though they were facing increased costs, it didn't trigger it didn't decrease the margin enough to kick in a payment. And so that means the organic, despite the fact that if there was an organic DMC program, it would have triggered that. They don't get anything because there's no organic DMC program in effect at all.
Organic farmers are participating in the program, but it's not based on the prices that they're receiving.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So this, admittedly, these numbers are a little bit small at the bottom, but you'll get the idea here. So the blue line is pay price. So we're looking at 2019 through 2022. You can see like gradual reduction. You'll have these slides. You can kind of check out these numbers a little bit more in depth, but basically like 34.30 slid down by basically $1 per hundredweight on average. The orange line is your cash cost of production per hundredweight equivalent. And as you can see, dramatic bounce, like the blue line and the orange line should not be that close together. You can't run a business when only your operating costs are being covered by your cost of production, right? The gray line is the full cost of production. So that's going to include all of your operating expenses, plus principal payments, plus family living, plus depreciation. And so even though like the 2022 numbers are an estimate, like it's very real because we used actual increases in expenses gathered from farms to then project out where they're going to land. So we're looking at like 2021 average cost of production was 36.18 a hundredweight, getting paid 33.43. And then we're looking at still getting paid 33.43 last year. But the estimated cost of production is $42.35 on average. So unprecedented situation. So this is just a quick snapshot. Like, again, like this is the same timeline with that previous graph. So 2019 through 2022, and you can see the precipitous drop in, 42 organic dairy farms lost since 2019. And just the highlighted, the bolded counties are where the highest concentration of organic dairy farms are. And I'll just wrap up leaving you with kind of a picture of who these farms are. So they're averaging about 80 milking cows per farm, with a median of 68. The range is 2 to 360 cows. 95% of these farms are small farms and certified small farms, and 5% are medium farm operations. And historically, this has been a viable business model until we've seen this slide of pay price and crazy increase in cost of production. And I'm going to turn it over to Mike now.
Just before you
Yeah. Oh, yeah, sorry.
we don't do that back and forth.
Sure, yeah.
Does anybody, Bobby, does anybody have any questions downstairs?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I think DMC paid out 1.5 million this last year. I don't know which farms got that, but I would have thought that if the cost of feed went up dramatically on the organic side, and the price was low enough, I don't see why that percentage wouldn't kick in basically like it did on the conventional side when the feed prices for the conventional farmers went pretty high. That's where when that kicked in, and I believe it was 1.49 maybe million dollars that DMC paid. And so I don't know why. Could Maddie explain why?
I can explain. So that 1.4 million was actually reimbursement of the premiums paid to enroll in the dairy margin coverage program for 2022. So that was not the payout. There was a payment in August, September. But that was one or two payments for the year. And again, it's only triggered, yes, all this was happening in the organic industry, but it's not set up to trigger when the organic farms are in that situation. It's only set up to trigger when conventional farms are faced with shrinking margin between paid price and cost of production. So there was no trigger.
So the 1.4 million was, sorry, I'll let you finish, let you continue, Bobby.
Yeah, follow-up question. How many of the organic farmers actually signed up for DMC?
I don't have an exact number, but the majority of folks do.
Over 100 is the last year. Most recent.
Yeah, because they did benefit from it in 2021.
I'd like to comment if I could.
That's
I'm not sure if anybody can hear me, and I apologize. I'm raising my hand.
Just a second, Maddie, or Marcy, I'm sorry. I think if it's okay, just so we stay on schedule. Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So hold your comment for a moment or two until we get you in the virtual witness chair. Representative Levitt has
I was just going to comment towards that to Bobby about that, but fine.
I just have a really quick question, which is how many conventional dairy farms versus how many organic farms in the state?
There are 537 total farms. So what is that? 390.
90 or 470.
I don't have a
298 conventional.
Roughly 300 to, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Representative O'Brien?
It'll be roughly 400.
There's a missing 100 there.
Yeah, it's roughly 400 because it's 537 was Diane's latest total, by Diane Bothfeld. So then 139.
We'll get a clear answer to that
98.
question and make sure everybody knows that. Representative O'Brien?
Thank you.
Then what's happened to this on the consumer side? It just seems like there's a ceiling that's not really moving now. And so have we reached sort of a point where there are not going to be any more, families buying organic or more of them in the same way that other dairy's growing?
Yeah. Quickest answer, and I'm not a consumer market demand specialist, but there has been some small growth. It's slowed down. There's most growth in the grass milk sector. What I think personally is the problem is that any shifts, the retailer and the distributors are sucking up the margin and it's not getting kicked down. So you're going to see it increase on the shelf, but that doesn't mean the farmer has gotten any more money.
Great. All right. Well, should we shift to the next witness then?
I'll let you flip this one. Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. I'm Mike Thresher. I actually work with Morrison Custom Feeds as a dairy consultant and been on the NOFA board for the past 2 years. And as Maddie said, I'll be the incoming board member as of tomorrow, as I'm told. So certainly thank you for your time here. My role on this is just kind of summarize where we are again and show some of the numbers where we're going. As Maddie said, we're looking at 28 farms. We're going to probably be losing this year, roughly somewhere between 25 and 30. These are farms that both Jen and I have worked with on a day-to-day basis and have said if we don't see some help ASAP by spring, we're closing the doors. Cows are going down the road. Some are getting cut off from grain sales. Some have stopped loans on payments, and 6 are currently for sale right now, and no buyers coming forward. Here's a little summary of where we've been. 2021, we lost 11 farms. 22, we lost 18. These are the organic farms that we lost and then projecting here. The financial impact, the data we got that from is from the Vermont Dairy Task Force 2021 study. It's $2.2 billion worth of economic impact to the state annually. So if you break that down per farm, and in 2021, there was roughly 583 farms, that's $3.7 million worth of economic impact per farm that these farms bring to Vermont. So losing these farms, you can see, if we lose 28 more this year, it's over $100 million of economic impact we're going to lose in this state. That's real money. That's affecting every job that we actually tie into, right down to our local insurance agencies that we probably work with ourselves. So we're really nervous of what's going on. These farms, again, as Maddie said, this is a one-time ask. When organic started, they committed to a sustainable price. Now we're on a stable price because of a surplus of milk. And because of that surplus of milk, that came from two loopholes that Maddie mentioned earlier. Original livestock that was closed last year, and then more teeth have been put into the enforcement of organic for this year to really stop a surplus of milk, which isn't hindering to your question of how are the consumers doing. The consumers are buying, but when we have a little too much milk for the consumer demand, we can't push prices up. So we've got to make sure everybody can buy our rules, and so we can get supply in check, going forward. Most farms, everyone says, well, go back to conventional. Most farms don't have that option. Many farms, organic farms, left their co-ops, whether it's DFA or Agrimark. Those co-ops in the last 3 years have been financially pinched, actually taking money from the farmers to keep the co-op solvent. So farmers went independent, and at the same time that lost their security for a market. Pandemic hit 3 years ago. The conventional market also went into a quota-based system. So if we take milk out of the organic market back into the conventional market, our conventional farmers are going to lose base production. So we're going to put those guys in a financial pinch as well. So it's a perfect storm all the way around that we look at what we're looking at right now. So we don't want to put conventional against organic, but the organic has a real market in the Northeast. We've got 139 farms remaining as of today. Again, 3.7 million per farm. It's over $500 million annual income that we're looking at, to the state on an annual basis. How do we address this? This is where we're coming up, the 9.2 million. We got roughly, 140 farms left. Based on production, on average per cow, 16,000 pounds per cow, gives us $5 a hundredweight relief, which is still way below cost production, but it makes up about half of that. It really improves cash flow. 9.2 million, again, is that one-time ask we're looking for. It's a crutch to go forward. There's a lot of good things. USDA, as Natty said, we've got some federal relief coming. That was just announced earlier this week. The enforcement of loopholes being closed. Also, the Northeast Dairy Business Center, that covers 11 states in the Northeast. It's almost $38 million. It's been pumped into that program, looking at increasing in-state processing. We see a huge need and demand for local milk for institutions, schools, hospitals. We just don't have the infrastructure in place to do that and meet that. So if we can keep these farms in business so we can get that infrastructure going, it's a small step going forward. There's $9 million is 1.74% of that total $500 million impact loss. It's going to cost us a lot more to get these farms back up and running if we lose these farms today. I appreciate it. Just to follow up on a quote that hit me right square in the face yesterday morning from Thomas Jefferson: agriculture is our wisest pursuit because it will, in the end, contribute most to the real wealth, good morals, and happiness. Thank you.
Thank you. We have now, I think, several farmers who are going to be set to testify. And just to keep us on schedule, we had, I think, hoped to give each farm 7 minutes. And we did get a little bit late, getting started. And I think we're also now a little bit late just because of the time that we've spent so far. But so let's try and keep it to 7 minutes. And if you don't need 7 minutes, that'll be somebody else can use that time. So who's up first?
I'm going to share if you want to there together.
Well, I can.
Okay.
Yeah.
My name is Amanda Ellis Thurber. I really want to thank you for
inviting us to hear our testimony today. I am part of Lilac Ridge Farm in Brattleboro, Vermont. We farm 750 acres, diversified small farm. I am part of 3 people who are going to talk on behalf of our farm. We'll start with me. The other person is my husband, Ross, who had to keep cleaning things up on the farm. And my nephew, Calvin, who is sitting right over here. So Amanda Ellis Thurber, Lilac Ridge Farm, West Brattleboro, Vermont. My husband was not able to be here. Okay, okay. After Ross and I graduated from UVM, we joined his parents on the farm as the 3rd generation of Lilac Ridge, which started in 1936 by Ross's grandfather. We milked around 45 cows back then, sold to Agrimark, grew our own hay, used intensive grazing management, sugared, and grew Christmas trees. So we've always been a diversified operation. In 1996, Ross and I added a 10-acre market garden mix, selling at farmers markets, restaurants, food co-ops. Passionate about organic production, we certified our vegetable acres in 1997. We took the plunge to begin transition to organic production with the dairy herd in 2004 and shipped our first milk of organic milk in 2007 to Organic Valley Cooperative. Those were the good old days. In 2022 now, we're milking 40 cows, still sugaring, 8 to 10 acre market garden. We cut timber on our forest land for log sales and firewood. We also provide on-farm education for local school children, our farm stand customers, and Airbnb guests. You'd think with all these diversifications and the work that we put into them, that we would be doing really great. We employ 3 young people during the growing season to work in the garden business. Calvin, our nephew, during the summers off college, doing herd management, pasture management, and haying. And we have 4 part-time employees, full season, covering milking shifts, works approximately 3 hours at a time. But as member owners, or owner operators, we work alongside all of our employees. We are what you'd call a yeoman farmer. We're also family farmers. We are organic farmers and we're diversified farmers, and we're feeling like an endangered species. We're watching our fellow organic dairy farmers sell their herds, and the consequence is a reduction in infrastructure services for all farms, milk haulers, grain sales and distribution, veterinary, and community of folks like us who are involved in a sustainable animal husbandry of the land, farming with ecological practices that sequester carbon. To be an organic farm, we are required by our certifier to use conservation practices at all times. We are your one-stop shop if you care about the climate when you're buying food, all right? The property values of our neighbors are high because they adjoin a conserved organic farm. We look at houses for sale in our valley, and we are listed as a selling point as our farm. Proximity to Lilac Ridge Farm, 1.2 miles. Proximity to Lilac Ridge Farm, 5 miles. Our farm and farms like ours are dying out, and it's not a mere economic issue. We as organic dairies are special places for our state, and losing us would change far more than the landscape. On to my husband, Ross.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
You can.
Thanks for having me. My name is Ross Thurber, and I'm a partner in Lilac Ridge Farm. Thank you for holding this hearing and your shared interest in our state's agricultural future. Clearly, this is an inflection point for our state's agricultural portfolio. In the midst of changing markets and forces that have always impacted agriculture in our state, we have choices to make about organic dairy farming. And you, as policymakers, have to consider how your work will shape our rural state and how it will look now and in the future. Are we interested in creating green jobs that can effectively sequester carbon and produce food? Are we interested in raising children in a rural setting, fluent in biology, problem-solving skills, and business acumen? These are some of the outcomes that must be considered today. Over the long term, I'm confident that grass-based food production in our state will be the most climate-forward, progressive form of agriculture. This type of farming will be the best entry point for new farmers and successive generations alike. If we choose to let the increased consolidation of resources to fewer large farms, there will be repercussions to deal with. This is not a version of Vermont that is best for our communities, schools, and our natural resources. With your assistance as policymakers, we will not be here again looking for a lifeline, but we'll look at our work with pride, positioning Vermont as a rural success story embedded here in close proximity to some of the largest metropolitan areas in our country. But what has to happen? With all due respect to our Secretary of Agriculture, we need to push back against the notion that all farms are fragile. Yesterday, I heard Secretary Tebbetts on Vermont Public make this equivocation to the current crisis in organic dairy and deferred that help will come from the federal government. To me, this is a
I got it. Is he printing the Bible or something?
Thank you. Continue, Ross.
To me, this is a tepid and flaccid response that lacks leadership. In a family system, you love all your children, but when one is in need, you devote resources towards them. Why is the agency afraid to advocate? And who is Secretary Tebbetts afraid of offending? I admonish you to ask these questions and be leaders that Vermont is proud of. Be creative problem solvers alongside us, farmers, and be willing to take risk and be proud of a solution that will benefit us now and for successive generations. It is my hope that this is just the beginning of this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ross. We have Calvin here as well, who's, well, you can introduce yourself, Calvin, and if you can just do it in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, I'll be quick. Hi there, I'm Calvin Gould. I'm Ross and Amanda's nephew. I'm a freshman at UVM studying dairy, with the plan being for me to come home to the farm and become the fourth generation to run our dairy. I consider myself extremely lucky to be in this business and to have grown up on an organic dairy. What other business can you have coffee with your nearly 80-year-old grandparents, haul cows to the sale barn with your teenage sisters, and eat lunch with your whole family in one work day? There's no other form of employment that allows me that. Dairy farming means much more to me than just a form of employment. It allows me to connect with the land differently than any of my peers can. In all ways, I would not be the man I am today without farming, and I'm sure many others in this room would echo this sentiment. It's given me routine and structure, something that's always steady despite any outside influence. Organic dairy specifically gives me a business I can count on still being viable and allows me an entry point when I graduate college. And not only that, but an industry full of people that are willing to support me in my dream, even if they look at me like I'm crazy. Now, I hate to be this blunt, but the party line we hear all too often and that Ross spoke to of all farms are precious, we need to support all of our farms has been beaten into the ground. We best of anyone know all farms are important, but right now organic farms are the ones in trouble and we need help. You don't just leave 25% of an industry by the wayside. We need help in immediate action, not just thoughts and prayers. Thoughts and prayers will not save these farms, and it certainly won't fill the hole that will be left in Vermont without us.
Thank you. And before you step aside, are there any questions?
Yeah, Dave,
Yeah.
Senator Campion has one.
Dave, I think it might be for perhaps Amanda
or
Ross. So can you just give us a sense, sort of a micro look at a farm in terms of what you would need financially to move forward? I mean, we're talking about 9 million, but what does that look like on your farm?
Ross or Amanda?
Yeah. That would, what that looks like on our farm would be roughly $20,000. And what would that do? That would help catch us up on payments that we have deferred or slowly paying, and essentially bring us to a zero. And then what happens after that is really the next question, and that's when, as I referred to, as far as creative problem solving, we really need to look at how the state can get on board with helping market and provide more processing opportunities and diversify the sort of competitive level of the market.
And though divided by how many farms we're talking?
How many are we talking?
How many organic farms are there that we're talking about?
139 remaining.
Yeah.
139.
Divided by 140,
Yeah,
64,000.
okay, so yeah, somewhere between, like, your need is 20,000, might be on the low end, the high need would be about 64,000.
No, 64 would be the median.
Yeah. Would be the median? Okay.
Yeah, there's some that would be a lot higher.
Okay. And just for my knowledge, how would this kind of thing be figured out in terms of who would need more, who would need less?
So it's based, the way Maddie pitched it, it's based on 100 weights. So if you had a 40 cow farm and they produced X number of pounds, it'd be on 100 weight. If you had 300 cows, it would be based on their per 100 weight. And I know on the DMC program, the larger farms are capped out at a certain level. The medium or middle-sized farms get so much, and the little farms just tier.
Yeah, that's helpful.
And this is, I think, a straight per 100 weight proposition. Is that right, Maddie?
Yeah, that's correct, Senator Starr. And I also just want to comment that those programs that you're referring to usually cap out at about 5 million pounds. Nearly all of these farms would fall below that threshold. These are small farms, all of them fall below that threshold.
And Mr. Thurber, I don't know if you're the Mr. Thurber, there was a Vermont Public Radio did a piece on this, and I'm not sure if it was you, Ross, but somebody from your family, I think, was on it that was pretty optimistic about the future. Was that you by any chance? Of organic dairy?
Yeah, I would say that I'm a farmer, so I'm optimistic by virtue of occupation.
By nature, okay. But going forward after this, you feel as though the organic dairy industry, you feel pretty good about its future?
I feel, as it was outlined, by Jen and Mike, as far as the some of the new rules that are coming into place will help. Yeah. But honestly, we could do so much more as a state to promote what our types of farms have to offer, not just from a climate perspective, but also from a tourist perspective. I mean, we really have a chance to think differently, and it all comes down to the willingness of policymakers alongside of us as farmers.
Yeah, thank you. It's helpful.
Calvin, did you have a response to the question, or?
I was just, Bobby actually explained it perfectly. The $20,000 that Ross is talking about is based on our yearly production, so our yearly pounds produced. That's where the $20,000 figure came from.
And Representative O'Brien, did you have a question for witness?
Yeah, I guess for all three of you. I just wondered if you total up your farm assets, so your farm property, your farm buildings, your herd with all the 4 generations of genetics now, what's the total of that? Because what I'm getting at is Calvin comes out of UVM. If you went out of business and he's got to find $3 million just to get where you are, that's a heavy lift.
I'd like to also make the point about the herd and 4 generations of genetics. I don't know if Henry's having this issue, but selling an organic herd at the moment is nearly impossible. Nobody's buying. More than likely, our cows would go to Northampton Cooperative and be sold at conventional beef price for 90 cents a pound. So even an exit strategy is dire.
Also, I'll just throw in there that if Calvin wants to get back in, he doesn't have a contract anymore.
No, I would no longer have a milk market, so I would be completely on my own, to put it that way.
We've been hearing a lot about the next generation of farmers, and so it's good to have you here, somebody that we can talk to directly.
Definitely, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Let's move on then. I think next up is the Reardon family, and I just want to say welcome to. We have Sean, and I will say full disclosure, I'm a customer of the Reardon family farm.
Hi, my name's Sean Riordan, and I farm in Shaftesbury, Vermont, with my wife Lauren and our 5 kids. We farm about 250 acres, and we had shipped to Organic Valley since 2014. And we're one of the farms who are very much at risk of not existing, and we're working with Jen right now to try to figure out a new way forward. And we've diversified, and we had to stop feeding grain 2 years ago just because it wasn't working financially, and that, you know, has its own challenges. And then we sold all of our heifers this past year and got nothing for them, just to have some extra cash around. And, you know, we're trying to work in any avenue that we can. But it's just, you know, it's really tough. And, you know, there's no direct, easy way out. But, you know, we came from Maryland, farming down there before here, and we saw what happened to a place when farms go away. And, you know, they lost tons of farms down there, conventional farms, and every single lot there that was a farm is now a housing development. And those farms are gone forever and won't come back. And, you know, that's a very real thing that can happen when large plots of land go up, you know, if they're not conserved. And that's not the Vermont way of life, I don't think. And, you know, it's just the money we would get would just get us through, you know, get us in a place where we could figure out the most viable way to move forward. But, you know, it's something that it's a great way of life. It's a great way to raise your kids. And, you know, it's crazy that you can work as hard as farmers do and still not, you know, not come up you know, out of the red in the end of the year. So I know it's sort of more pessimistic than the present, but, you know, it's the reality of our situation. And but I think anything would help the farms. You know, the federal government gave money to banks to get them through a period, and I think farmers deserve that more than bankers do at this juncture. So I think it's, you know, you help out the people in your community that need help, and that's organic farmers right now. But yeah, I don't know if you have any questions, but that's kind of where we're at.
Great, thank you, Sean. Are there any questions from the committee here or from the Senate committee? Representative Rice.
Sean, I mean, just bluntly, without this payment, do you see a path forward through the next 12 months?
Not an easy one, you know. I mean, I think that there's always some path forward. You know, you have to do whatever you can, but it would take a significant load off of us. I know, you know, just that to help us just be able to move forward. Yeah, I think we can still farm, but it's always been hard, and now it's getting really, really hard. And, you know, I think that it would get us through this year. But again, you know, it's not going to save us in the long run, but it would significantly help every farmer I know. So.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Sean, for your testimony. And I think next on the list is Marcy. Marcy, thank you for.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, and thank you for your patience.
I usually don't have those. No, I do. I had notes actually, and then I just threw them all away because I changed my opinion on things. But anyhow, first off, I guess for those of you who don't know me, my name is Marcy Gillette, and I farm in Derby. I am a 4th generation dairy farmer, and a little bit of a background. I am a graduate of the University of Vermont before the 2+2 program began. So I just aged myself as well. And I have spent a lot of time out in the industry, working at different places and doing different things, only to come back to my dream. So here I am. And I'll try not to get too emotional. On I believe it was Jen's timeline, I fell in that 2016 timeline where my parents sold the cows and I transitioned, and here I am. Just bear with me.
Do you want to take a moment, Marcy? You can take a moment if you'd like.
No, I'm good. I'm good. I serve as a director for the New England Dairy Promotion Board. I'm also on our local county committee for the USDA FSA office. I'm a local 4-H leader, and I appreciate listening to other farmers about how we all diversify. I have a part-time job where I provide respite services for local individuals. And my boyfriend, who helps me, works at the local hardware store, and my parents also help me. So what I wanted to go back to and talk about was, first off, about the DMC payments. As I just got my tax form in the mail the other day, I'd like to comment that my DMC payments for 2022 were about $4,000. I'd also like to let you know that my fuel bill is $3,000 a month during the summer. So that said, being a director on the county committee, at this point in time, I believe most everybody in Orleans County is signed up for DMC. There's one individual who's not, and probably because he's an organic farmer who couldn't come up with the money to apply for that to pay for the coverage last year. And honestly, I think he just said, it's not worth the hassle. He didn't have the money to pay for the coverage, to wait for the reimbursement for the little bit of money he was going to get back. So that's his choice. But that's where DMC was last year. That's what I wanted to say on that note back there. I was one of the Horizon producers that lost my milk contract. I appreciate the money that came in to help secure a new buyer, and it's been very helpful, but obviously, as we all know, it doesn't cover everything. So this money, honestly, hey, I got neighbors to pay, like the guy who spreads my manure, my hoof trimmer, just those things. That's all this is. I got a broken milk truck in the yard right now, but I'm sure he's gonna get going soon. And so yeah, it's been one of those days. And right now I rent the farm from my parents. I don't know who or how I could write a business plan to even think about purchasing it with the current situation. Yeah, so before I make more of a fool of myself, the option, honestly, is bankruptcy, and I don't think that helps me or anybody else around. So, thank you.
Thank you, Marcy. Thank you for sharing your situation with us this morning. And please stay on the call if you can. And
I will.
And I think, is Pete Miller next?
Muted.
Pete, you're muted.
I think he's trying to unmute. We've all been there, Pete.
Yeah. Oh.
Did he hear you?
I think Pete, can you hear us? Okay, well, while you work on unmuting, is there another?
Yeah, we have Leanna.
Okay, Leanna, do you want to take the witness chair then? And we'll just go slightly out of order here.
Good morning. I'm Leanna Campaga. Thank you for having me today. I had a really nice long speech on a time crunch. I'll try to shorten it up as best as I can. I wanted to let you know that I don't feel like my story is that significant or awe-inspiring, but I'm hoping that today it's moving enough that it will make an impression on you all and you'll understand and acknowledge and feel how dire and concerning the state of the organic industry in Vermont is. I am not just here to represent myself or my family farm, but also here to represent all small organic farms in our state. And honestly, I doubt our situation, especially, she's got me so emotional right now, especially after hearing what Marcy had to say. Our situation's probably not the worst. But in our area, there have been many farms that have already sold out and more that plan to. I know of 2 in our area that have already sold, 2 more that are trying, but they can't find buyers. Honestly, I think even 1 farm being forced to sell their business prematurely due to uncontrollable industry and economic factors is one too many. As I stated previously, my name is Leanne Campagna, and I'm 33, and I'm an organic dairy farmer in Whiting, Vermont, with my husband. We have 4 young children, and we currently work for my parents, and we're working on transition. I'll be a 3rd generation American farmer. I have family that farmed in the Netherlands. My husband is a 1st generation farmer, which is not something you hear too often anymore. My story started about 27 years ago when I was 6 years old, and my parents moved us to Weybridge, Vermont on a small farm rented from the college, Middlebury College. I'll never forget 2 weeks later when the cows arrived. One of the cows gave birth on the cattle trailer, and she had a beautiful little heifer calf. She was a lineback. I don't know if anyone knows what that is, but they're beautiful cows. My husband hates them because they're hot-headed. Like me? No, I'm just kidding. Hot-headed one. She was adorable and absolutely so curious, and I was just as curious about meeting her. I had not been exposed to farming in general up until that point. My father got out of farming before I was born and was a welder at a factory. But I'll never forget that moment because that's when my love affair with cows and the dairy agriculture started. My parents were very successful on a farm for a long time, but as we grew older, me and my 3 other siblings, our needs and personal finances got larger. So they did what a lot of farmers, conventional farmers do, and expanded. They started milking just shy of 200 on a new dairy that they purchased. And that was about the first time that I remember as a kid, the conventional price crashing. And what started off looking like was going to be a prosperous endeavor ended up being very bad fast. My father was also diagnosed with cancer during that time. So life got extremely financially difficult fast. My siblings and I were still very young when this happened. But even at that age, I was shouldering quite a bit of farm responsibilities. Before I could even drive, I was running a skid steer, cleaning barns, milking cows, feeding calves. Thankfully, my father did beat cancer. And so much of what happened during that period in lives is what drove my parents to return to farming at a smaller scale and ultimately converting to organic dairy farmer. And my parents signed on with Organic Valley in 2007. And in 2008, they also started making artisanal cheese and selling their cheese to the sellers at Jasper Hill in 2008. The organic milk market, unlike the conventional milk market, promised a stable, non-fluctuating milk price. And my parents were able to pay down so much of their old debts that they carried from their previous farming years in conventional farming. And organic farming ultimately was how they were able to be successful and what led to mine and my husband's opportunity to farm. Despite the hardships my parents endured, I never resented the life or the work of the farm. If anything, I fell more in love with the farm and more determined to farm myself. Sorry, there's no water.
Oh.
I went to college for 4 years as a Farms 2+2 recipient, earning my associate's degree in dairy herd management from VTC and my bachelor's degree in animal science with a minor in community development and applied economics. I actually went to school with Henry Grohl. No bias, right? I met my husband, Mike, someone he also knows, while we were at VTC, and we got married in the fall of 2010. We both worked on multiple farms, both as general laborers and as managers. And both while we were in school and after we graduated school. In the summer of 2012, my parents approached my husband and I about joining them on their farm and having us eventually buying the business. Between their small cheese business and the financial stability of the organic market, they were able to take us on as farm employees. We expanded the herd slightly to a little over 100 cows, milking out of a switch group. And then eventually in 2016, we expanded our business again to a second dairy in Whiting, Vermont, where my husband and I are now. So my parents still own that farm, but my husband and I are the ones that solely manage it. It was the name of the old farmer was Paul Canal. And when we bought that farm, I say we because again, even though my parents own it, it's our farm. We full-heartedly take responsibility and ownership. My father said to my husband, talking about the farm, "This is your baby. I bought that farm for you and you will own it. So I expect you to run it as if you already do." So the business is now split between the two farms, and my parents milking 40 to 50 cows in Weybridge. And my husband and I managing a little over 1,000 acres, both tillable and hay, a herd of 240 organic cows and 160 heifers and calves. Up until recent years, as you saw on the slides, 2016, 2017, the industry had been profitable. So just a recap, we moved in 2016, so the same year as Marcy. It was not a get-rich profitable, but capable of paying your bills, making the farm improvements you needed, and have a decent quality of life type of profitable. But we also got notified the same year by Organic Valley that there was going to be a $2 a hundredweight inventory reduction. Our co-op just had too much inventory. And, it's one of those funny things with co-ops. The co-op needs the farmers, but the farmers also need the co-op, right? So these were issues that our farm elected board decided on. But on top of that inventory reduction, we also were given a quota or a base. So we were being paid less a hundredweight and told we can't produce more milk to make up the deficit. So we were a brand new startup farm. So obviously we had new loan payments to make, and simply put, money got tight fast. My husband and I felt an immense amount of pressure because we felt financially responsible, not just for ourselves, but my parents. If you remember back, my parents were doing very well financially on their small farm, and they took all this risk so my husband and I could farm. To give us free, and part of the reason why they bought the second farm was to give us the freedom to be our own managers and have our own dairy. My parents are only in their 50s. They're not retiring tomorrow. They got 10 years or so. So we needed to be financially successful, not only for ourselves, but to keep my parents afloat. I can't tell you how many times I thought my husband was going to break under the immense amount of pressure he felt to be successful. Luckily, because often it is luck, that the choice you made today won't be your downfall tomorrow. Not to toot his horn, but my husband's very good at what he does. He's incredibly hardworking. And he's incredibly resourceful. And he's extremely ambitiously driven. We farm today because of him. But by 2019, the farm had financially improved because of good management practices and improvements to the land and the herd as well. So then you fast forward to 2020 and 2021. We didn't get any milk price increases, nothing substantial enough to make a difference. The $2 deduct was never returned, but we were getting better at what we were doing, making more milk on less grain and with less cows. And we did this by improving feed quality, increasing animal comfort, increasing the base of our herd genetics. And in those years, we were getting some of the DMC payments, some of the COVID payments, and the costs for commodities, fuel, labor, and supplies and whatnot were relatively, I want to say low, but stayed the same. Then in rolls 2022, and the reason why I'm here today. Sometimes, no matter how good you are at doing things, so I should recap. The farmers you're helping are not dumb. A lot of them are educated. They know how to not just take care of land and animals, they know how to work finances. They know how to make cuts in places other people wouldn't know how to make cuts. They know how to become more efficient when you think there's no other ways to become more efficient. And we do all that without compromising our animals and land, but we do compromise ourselves. So anyways, 2022 was a year that no amount of frugalness, innovation, or increases in efficiencies were going to make a difference. Sometimes no amount of effort is going to make the numbers work. With 2022 in our region, not only brought inflated costs, but also one of the worst droughts I've seen in my life. I've lived in the Champlain Valley now since I was 6 years old. As you've heard, I've always been part of the farm operation even since I was young. I don't remember it ever being that dry. We manage enough land that for the past 3 to 4 years, we sell feed to other organic farmers. This year, and we always maintain extra feed stores. So we have a couple months of extra feed every year, just in case it's a really wet spring or maybe there's a slight drought. This year, we were not able to crop any extra hay to sell, and we were unable to crop enough feed for our own herd. And we'll be using up all our reserves. So fingers crossed it's a good spring. We've had to buy 400 tons of haylage this winter. And as much as we track every little ounce we feed, it's looking like it won't be enough and we may have to buy more feed. So we'll be forced to buy more feed before spring and first cut are here. In 2022, these are rough numbers. Fuel, grain, employee costs, and custom hire harvesting. So custom hire is having a custom chopper come in. That's also, hiring trucks to haul feed, manure spreading, anything that you custom hire out. All of those things, so those are our biggest costs on the farm, went up 20 to 40,000 more from the year before in comparison to 2021. We were just looking at our profit and loss of 2021 to 2022 with my mom yesterday. Okay, so this year, all right, so keep in mind that we had a severe drought. In 2021, part of our custom hire costs were chopping first parts of our first, second, third cut grass. We also do round baling, and we hire out part of our manure hauling. This past year, we only chopped first cut because there was not enough second and third cut to make it worthwhile to chop. So anything that was croppable, we baled, and we spread all our own manure. Think about less rain, less water going into the pit, so there's less manure to spread. Despite that, our custom hire bill went up $20,000 because of the increased costs, because they're feeling the inflation too and have to increase their own costs in order to make up the difference in fuel and parts and hired help. But because the last few years leading up to 2022 were successful or relatively successful, and there was DMC and COVID payments in the last year that helped pay down some of the new debts we took on with the farm, we are very fortunate to say that we were able to stay ahead of our bills with a new operating loan, I will say. But barely. It has forced us to make choices we don't want to. It has forced us to put farm projects on hold. Farm projects that can't stay on hold, like the barn roof needing to be replaced. The barn that holds our maternity pen, a parlor, and older heifer group needs a new roof this year, if we like it or not. We can't sustain multiple financial years like this. We can't just keep taking out operating loans every year. We will get behind. So this is particularly devastating for my husband and I, because we have poured our heart and soul into this farm, building up our land and our herd into what it is and what it's becoming. We've also started the process of farm transfer. We're working with Vermont Farm Viability. And our goal is to buy the herd and the equipment from my parents at the beginning of 2024 and rent the land and facilities. And after all I've told you, you probably think we're crazy, but we're that dedicated and that willing to risk buying our dairy, even if the margins aren't promising and very threadbare. And cash flow is minimal, if not existent. But reality is, whether I want to admit it or not, if the organic industry continues on the path it's on in our state, if prices don't reduce, if there isn't more outside support, or the milk price doesn't increase to meet the increase in prices caused by inflation, we may have no choice but to sell the farm. My husband and I may not ever get the opportunity to own our dairy. And as you can see, that would be devastating. It would not only mean the end of another small organic Vermont family farm, but also means another generational business will no longer exist. My husband and I are only in our 30s. We're really just beginning. The organic dairy industry for our state for so many years was an opportunity to keep small farms viable and give the next generation, regardless if they were related or not, an opportunity to farm at a smaller scale. Because right now, with your larger conventional farms, for the most part, you have to either be a relative or find a way to buy in. You're not just outright buying that farm. You're becoming a partner if you're lucky, or you're a relative. And that's changing. Organic is not, you will see more organic farms go out of business this year, and you won't be seeing new young individuals taking up the mantle. Because financially, it's just not going to be feasible. The cost of production is too high. And I'm not here to tell you we are giving up, because we aren't. And I wouldn't be sitting here if I was. But many will choose to give up, and they're not going to have a choice. And you can see from the people here, it's going to be younger people like Marcy and older people that have to retire or cut their losses too soon. Sorry, that got emotional. I blame it on having 4 children. Being a mom.
No, I have no excuse.
I am conscious of the time and aware that some folks may have some other commitment that they need to rush to. But I do want to see if Pete wants to add anything. Pete, you're with us now.
I think I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I hit some goofy button and couldn't recover. Pete Miller from Vernon, Vermont. Jen Miller has done her cost of production study on our farm, and we have consistently over the last number of years been either the most or one of the most efficient organic dairies in the state. And when my brother and I were talking this last September about quitting because we had dumped a bunch of our retirement money back in just to pay bills, that really shook me at the foundation, and I realized that every other organic farmer in the state must be in serious trouble. On the farm, if a wheel squeaks, there's a reason for it, and you're hearing a lot of squeaking and grinding of the bad bearings in here. Our farm has been made up of 3 families primarily, kind of farming collectively, collaboratively. And then we have one of Henry's good friends also, Brandon Bacassi, my son-in-law, has been coming on representing the next generation. And he and my daughter are part owners in a bottling company. I brought one of these in case you see it. Kind of our brand is that Thirsty Calf. We are diverting about 10% of our milk into this milk bottling business. We're also looking to expand some of that. That business helped us keep pumping some money into the commodity dairy business, which represents about 90% of our milk, which goes directly to Stonyfield. We want to recognize that you guys are seeing a problem here. I don't have the answers in policy, and I'm not going to pretend to. We as farmers, the previous testimony, we are an intelligent bunch, and part of the intelligence would be to walk away when it gets too tough, you would think. But the trend in conventional has been to get big or get out. I don't know that you guys want to do that with organic. The total number of cows in the state really hasn't changed a whole lot, nor the acres farmed. But the nature of those acres, the nature of those farms has definitely changed in my lifetime farming here. I do want to share a cute little story. We're in collaboration trying to develop some soft serve ice cream with the Lilac Ridge people, Ross, Amanda. But we're also, our bottled milk is up at UVM now a little bit. And I was up there doing a demo in their cafeteria. And who should come through line but Calvin Gould, who was sitting there at your table a few minutes ago. And we use this syrup from Lilac Ridge Farm in our maple milk. And he just about jumped on a table, but he was so excited to be able to grab that maple milk and say, hey guys, this is our maple syrup in this milk. And it's been a real rewarding experience for us to be able to produce a product that we can share with our community. I do see that as being some of the solution for the state of Vermont, being able to take our Vermont branded products, especially south toward New York and east toward Boston. But I also recognize that that is not a solution for everybody. 90% of our milk still goes on a commodity truck. And we're not really set up to bottle even all of our milk if we wanted to. And I hope that you guys can come up with some things that will help us as an industry survive. I believe that people will survive, but like the Riordans, we will give it a shot. We're going to try. And like the Thurbers, they've done a lot of diversification. It would be a shame to see any of the organic dairy drop out of that. We as farmers want to farm, and we want to be given a fair shot. Right now, our farms in the state would not be able to claim fair trade certification because just like all of the other fair trade brands that we see out there, something on the order of a sustainable pay place for something to be considered fair trade. And I think it's a pretty significant black eye to the industry that right now nobody could claim giving organic dairy farmers a fair trade price for their product. Thank you for your time. I don't know if you have any questions for me or any of the other farmers that are still on, but I appreciate your taking the attention to look at our current organic dairy crisis. And I deeply appreciate the work that you guys do up there. I know that the solutions are not easy and every decision has unintended consequences, but I appreciate your time and interest in our plight right now.
Thank you, Pete. And I'm going to ask Maddie to come back into the chair. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. If everyone wants to stay on the call for another couple minutes, we have a couple of questions here in our committee. So let me just call out a couple of folks here and then see if anybody, well, let's go with that. Representative Rice, did you have a question?
No, I did.
Representative Levitt.
I just have a question for all of you, and it can be a simple head nod. Is the 9.2 million going to be enough of a bridge to get you through the year? Okay, good to know.
Okay, Representative Lipsky.
Yeah, Maddie, I heard you speak this morning between 8 and 9 at the Rural Caucus. And you were very clear there, and as compelling as you have been here this recently, that you used a specific number, like $5 per hundredweight was what this ask was for. And in all the dialogue that's been going back and forth from two committees, I don't think that was articulated. So for everyone that's still involved in this communique, if you repeat how it actually, because some farms have 4 cows, some have 300. It's obviously a big difference, like the Thurbers are somewhere in the middle or.
Yeah, absolutely. I can reiterate where that number comes from. So essentially the 9.2 million, when you break it down, that is reflecting based on our cost of production data, which I will also say, not to toot our own horn, I'm really tooting Jen's horn here, is exemplary in the nation. The way that Vermont calculates our cost of production is seen as an example across the organic dairy industry. And so we have essentially 80 cows on average per farm. That's the average. Obviously, we showed you that range. We have 139. And just to demonstrate this, the slide where all this information is says 140 because we made it on Monday. We have 139 now. The average milk production per cow per year is 16,448 pounds. And then if you multiply that by that average number of, of cows per herd, you get 284,217,600 pounds. So that $5 per hundredweight multiplied by that 184 million pounds of organic production, that's our estimate for the whole production in the organic industry in Vermont for 2022, gives you that 9.2 million number. We are not asking for the state to make up the entire shortage that we see. The cost of production data that Jen shared shows just under $9 that's the differential currently between farmers' cost of production and their pay price. On the conventional side, if you look at their dairy margin coverage program, that program often kicks in at $9.50 as the margin above the cost of production. And that program only kicked in for the months of August and September last year, meaning for conventional producers, their margin was somewhere around just over $10.81, I believe, per hundredweight was the average margin on the positive side that conventional saw last year. We are just about equal to that on the negative in organic for 2022, just to differentiate the situations there.
Senator Starr, are there any questions in your room?
I think we're okay for right now. We'll probably need, more testimony as we move forward with this suggestion on facts and figures and all that. So no, we're good to go. I think. Anybody?
Also, thank you.
Irene?
I would like to know if you've approached our Congress people yet about this. Are they alerted? Are the feds doing anything for you like they did for the bankers, as was raised earlier? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for that question, Senator Renner. And the feds have announced some form of relief. So there are essentially two payments that they have announced as of last week, earlier this week. It's been a long week. There is one payment that is a pandemic assistance payment that's essentially building on a previous pandemic relief payment. So that pandemic relief payment will pay primarily conventional dairy farmers, especially in Vermont, because it's going from 5 million to 9 million pounds of production. So they'll pay on that, but that's, again, those aren't the farms we're talking about here because none of our farms are making that much milk in the organic sector in Vermont right now. The other payment that USDA announced, because they were told to by Congress in the last omnibus spending bill that they had to announce something by the end of this month, essentially says that they will pay up to 75% of organic farmers' marketing costs for 2023. I don't know if anybody in these rooms knows Tom Berry, who worked for Senator Leahy for 30 years. Just to give you a little insight into that, Tom Berry doesn't know what marketing costs mean in this context, nor do I, nor does the executive director of the Northeast Organic Dairy Producers Alliance, nor do Jen and Mike sitting here. So they have announced something because they were told to. We are not really confident at all about what those actual figures will look like. And we're not confident without a lot more detail that they're going to come close to making up the shortfall that we're talking about. And Jen can speak more to what marketing costs could mean.
I don't even know if I want to even pretend to have the hypothesis, but I was just gonna say too, like, we're talking about payment to make people a little bit better off, like.
Exactly.
2022, right?
Exactly, yes.
This marketing payment thing is looking forward to 2023. It also, like, there's no timeline for rollout, there's no anything, but they're not looking back retroactively, they're saying it's based on 2023 production.
And these farms need that retroactive payment to make it to 2023.
Yeah. Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, so let me just wrap up then by thanking everybody for being here today, whether in person or virtually. And we appreciate the testimony. We'll stop the conversation there. I will just say that our committee will have a little further conversation about next steps because the ball is currently in the House in our court. So why don't we're running a little bit late. So why don't we all be back here at 1 if you can. If you need a little more time, say so now. And we'll have a little more discussion.
Rodney.
Yes, Rodney.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment. I know Henry, John, Heather, we fought pretty hard last year to get a different program in here besides just paying the premiums for the dairy margin protection program, because we knew it wasn't going to work for small farms. And we didn't get any traction to do that. Hopefully this testimony here today will help change that.
Thank you for that perspective.
No.
Those of us who weren't here.
That's Henry, we fought hard.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for letting us cut into your lunch hour. Really appreciate it.
Not like the food here, so good.
Girl.
That sounds so good.